Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. And this is Eastern Fables by Manly P. Hall. An article taken from The All-Seeing Eye, Volume 5, Number 7, April 1931. Eastern Fables. From the storytellers of the ancient East has descended to this modern generation a priceless heritage of parables and fables. Only Asia, steeped in 50 centuries and more of sacred tradition and expressing itself through a magnificent philosophic literature, could set forth so simply and beautifully the great realities of life. Take, for example, the fable of the elephant driver. Once upon a time, there was a very holy man in India who had a chela or pupil to whom he was imparting the deeper mysteries of life. Sitting by the roadside, the holy man discoursed thus to his young student. The beginning of wisdom, my son, is the ability to recognize the presence of divinity in everything. God, as the Creator, is everywhere present. He is in every stick and stone. He is the soul of every creature. His presence is in the heavens and in the earth, and in all things He is the ever-present reality. Therefore, my son, if you will love and recognize this God who is ever with you, He will protect you and guide you, and His goodness in all creatures will serve you. Go therefore into the town and behold God in everything. When you have learned His lesson, return to me and I will teach you other mysteries. Trying to understand and repeating to himself the words, God is in everything and He will protect me, the youth started down the village street. He tried to see God in the palm trees and in the eyes of little laughing children. Gradually, the whole village seemed to become filled with a divine presence. Suddenly, coming towards him in the street, there appeared a great elephant, with a gilded howdah on its back, with its driver and his long hook perched on the great neck. The elephant belonged to a native prince and was hastening to the palace. To test his new philosophy, the youth stood in the middle of the road in front of the oncoming elephant, saying to himself, God is in this elephant. If I know this sufficiently, God will protect me and this elephant will not hurt me. The elephant driver cried out in a loud voice, Get out of the way, this elephant is on urgent business. Step aside quickly or you will be hurt. But the young pupil would not move, confident that the divinity in the elephant would not permit the animal to injure him. About this time, the great pachyderm reached the Hindu boy and, twisting his trunk around the youth's body, threw him some distance into a muddy ditch where he lay sprawled out, bruised and disillusioned. Finally, picking himself up, the bedraggled Keller limped along the road until he came to the place where his old teacher was sitting quietly in the shade. Master, said the youth, I went into the town as you told me and saw God in everything, and all went well until I tried to see God in an elephant. But when I addressed this divinity in the elephant, it betrayed me and threw me unceremoniously out of the road. In what way did I fail? The holy man smiled kindly and replied, You accomplished all except one thing, my son. You did not hear the voice of God in the warning of the elephant driver. The lesson of the Hindu is obvious. We are never left without the solution to our problems if we are capable of recognizing that solution. The world is full of wisdom, but most of us fail because we are incapable of recognizing wisdom and applying the wonders about us to the achievement of our purposes. There is another elephant story that makes a very practical point. Once upon a time, there was a blind king who had 4 blind counselors. He chose blind counselors because he did not want people around him who could see more than he could. One day, the king desired to find out what an elephant looked like, so he sent the 4 blind counselors to get the information for him. Let into the presence of the great animal, each began to investigate in his own way. The first began to examine one of the elephant's legs, trying to reach around it. He then hastened to the king and told him that an elephant was an enormous creature like a tree with a huge stem that extended upward as far as he could reach. The second man got hold of the elephant's trunk and he reported that the animal was the shape of a huge snake which wriggled. The third counselor, reaching upward from behind, grabbed the tail, so he described the elephant as a strange, rope-like thing that hung downward from the sky. The fourth and most ambitious counselor had a ladder put alongside the animal. Climbing on top and feeling in every direction, he collected evidence which caused him to report that an elephant was a huge flat beast resembling an island. When the prince received these very contradictory statements, he accused all his counselors of lying because the stories did not agree and therefore sentenced them to death. Before the time set for their execution, He was a little troubled and sent for a philosopher who had eyes and related to him the various descriptions he had received. The philosopher replied, "Sire, do not execute these counselors, for they were all just men and did the best they could. Each being blind, described the animal as he saw it." The philosopher then went on to explain that we are all blind men, and that all of the misunderstandings and disagreements that exist in life result from blind men trying to examine the nature of reality. He lamented the fact that in the world men do not know that they are blind and therefore try to establish through bigotry and intolerance opinions which are as erroneous but as honest as those of the blind counselors. Centuries ago, a Japanese priest by the name of Shirobi had a dream which was to profoundly influence the destiny of the flowery kingdom. In his dream, this learned Shinto beheld two little trees growing side by side on the crest of a rocky hill. One was a tiny fir tree, and the other a small but graceful willow. And it seemed to the sleeping man that the trees talked to each other, and the pine tree said to the willow, "Brother Willow, why do you not stand up straight and firm as I do? I am strong and stout, and I bow my head to nothing. I am of an ancient and honorable line, and my ancestors have stood upon these hills for centuries. I'm a proud, strong tree." Now the little willow had a modest and retiring spirit. It bowed humbly to the rather egotistic little fir and replied, "The gods have decreed a humbler station for me. I must bow my head to every wind that blows." Winter came. The snow gathered upon the hills and also upon the branches of the little fir tree, and the fir tree bent with the weight of the snow. And at last, one day after a great blizzard, there was a crash, a groan as of agony, and the little fir fell, broken by the weight of snow which was upon its branches. But for the willow, which was very humble, there was no such ignominious end. When the snow fell upon it, the willow bent its branches and the snow slid off. When spring came, the willow stood gazing sadly at its fallen friend, for the proud little fir was dead, while the drooping little willow was unharmed. Shirobi, the priest, awoke from his dream and, inspired thereby, established the gentle art, Jiu-Jitsu, the Japanese system of wrestling. He declared pliancy to be the secret of life and strength, proving through the story of the two trees that humility and willingness to bow to the inevitable are the path of the greatest good. In closing, let us take a fable from the Greeks, who were also noted for the rare quality of their wit and the pertinence of their reflections. On a certain day, an Athenian philosopher chanced to be passing with his disciples through a grain field which was waiting to be harvested. In a pensive mood, the master walked along with his head upon his chest, paying little attention to the world about him. Among his pupils was a young man who was dedicated to the ethics of the gymnasium. Irritated by the incorrectness of the master's walking posture, the student dared to interrupt the wise man's reveries. "Master, do you not know that it is unhealthy to walk with your shoulders bent and your head hanging down, and further, that it is a bad example to these young scholars? Why do you not stand up and throw your shoulders back and advance resolutely to your purpose?" The philosopher smiled indulgently, and with a sweep of his hand pointed to the grain field, saying, "My boy, look out there. Do you see those stalks of grain that stand up perfectly straight? If you will examine them, you will find that their heads are empty. But this other grain which hangs over so heavily, those heads are full. Learn posture from the grain field and rebuke, not the wise." It is strange but true that all the great thinkers of the world have had the peculiar habit of hanging their heads forward, but it remained for the Greek philosopher to establish the reason. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment, and if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.